Góðan og blessaðan daginn, and welcome to our Litla Gróðurhúsa Familia. Today I have the pleasure to be accompanied by Daria Testo. Daria, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a great weather, great day. I'm ready to talk to you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Just to describe our surroundings, we are located in a greenhouse in the Nordic House in Reykjavík city. We are in the heart of the city, right beside an airport. So there might be some planes flying around. But Daria, tell us, I would like to know about your practice and about the place you come from. I heard you assume yourself as a cultural navigator. Would you like to talk to us about that?
Yeah, with pleasure. So I am of Buryad-Mongolian descent, which is a nation that lives around Baikal Lake in Siberia, in eastern Siberia, north of Mongolia. And I am positioning myself as cultural navigator and as a curator as my main area of expertise, let's say, or area that I navigate myself the most. The cultural navigator part is mostly about the fact that the area where I'm from is extremely, went through an enormous amount of cultural changes and histories which affected the nation's pride about being who we are and what we stand for because of the colonization during the Russian Empire, during the Soviet Union, and after that, in today's day. And very much cultural navigation is an attempt to locate ourselves in our culture, find that self-identifying parts that make us who we are, and also allow for the presence of the indigenous culture, of our culture, to be present in today's media, today's contemporary art, music, any sort of way to express for the people that come from my area and showcase who they are.
I have been following your work as a curator, and I know that one of your motives, of your main motives, is heritage preservation. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, of course. Cultural preservation and heritage preservation is incredibly important. I wish I could do so much more about it, and I'm trying to educate myself in any areas that I could try and use that cultural preservation. The cultural preservation of indigenous persons starts with themselves. It's definitely an important task to communicate to the world that what you stand for goes along with the traditions and heritage of where you come from. You start that by simply learning a language because it was not allowed to speak your language back in the Soviet time. It is to practice, try to carry the heritage on you very proudly, which I am always trying to do, and just learn more about yourself, learn more about your culture, about your ancestors, about your wonderful family that did so much for preserving this culture. And then later on, once you kind of become what you believe in and slowly preserve that heritage inside of you, then you can slowly try to showcase it to others and make people learn and be more aware of the cultures that exist on our planet. Because I mean, in Siberia, there's like more than hundreds of indigenous tribes, and unfortunately, not so many people know about it and learn about it.
That has been very wonderful for the time that I have known you, and I'm very thankful for that. It has been so valuable for me to get to know a little bit, a glimpse of the place you come from and your culture through you. So I thank you for that, and I think it would be very valuable for our audience as well if you could provide perhaps a little bit more information on the place you come from.
Yeah. It's a wonderful place. You do get to romanticize a little bit the place where you come from once you leave the place, but it's still it's incredibly dear to my heart, and enormous amount of my family is still there, and they live and do keep traditions, preserve heritage in their own special way. The place where I come from is, as I said, is in Siberia. And I think a lot of assumptions about Siberia, it's a very cold, distant place, which is kind of maybe not as international, maybe not as affected by globalization of some sort. But I feel like it's a very up-to-date place. There's so many wonderful youngsters, teenagers, young adults who are right now in the moment of, at this moment of time, they really are trying to reconnect with their identity and reconnect with just the personification or kind of a symbolism of what it is being Buryad-Mongolian. Unfortunately, right now, there's many complications with that part because the Buryad-Mongolia is in Russia. Mm-hmm. So therefore, there's a lot of problematics and a lot of the younger generation is leaving the country. And at the moment, right now, I don't have a lot of people who are in Buryad-Mongolia. They are in Mongolia, mm-hmm. Which is where our ancestry comes from.
Why is that? Why is it that young people are leaving Buryad-Mongolia?
Well, unfortunately, they are being very much mobilized for the war in Ukraine and used in somebody else's war and it's just very incredibly sad because, I mean, there's so much potential in this young people. I know so many people who have been trying to rebuild the culture, rebuild the identity, as I mentioned, and they do leave their homelands and they do very much miss it and they kind of disconnect with it. So it's really painful to watch.
What brought you to Iceland?
I came to Iceland a year and a half ago in August. And to be precise, the exact reason was, well, there's actually two. I mean, my partner is Icelandic, and we were thinking to come to Iceland because it would be easier a bit for me due to the visa problematics because I do have a Russian passport. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it was kind of an idea that came to our minds when we were in Netherlands because we both studied there.
Okay. To
come to Iceland and kind of try our life here, see where it takes us. Coincidentally, I'm also studying in Listaháskóli, Islands, studying curatorial practice, which made my visa situation easier and also just a wonderful studies, which was it's just very rare to see curatorial studies anywhere. So my assumption was that I wanted to try it because mm-hmm. it's something new, it's something very fresh. Therefore, yeah, I came here.
Were you doing curatorial practices before starting this program?
Yeah, actually, not in the most like fine arts type of way. I was participating in a couple shows and exhibitions back in the Netherlands and also back in Buryat Republic, Buryad-Mongolia. The projects that I was participating in the Netherlands were related to the university where I was studying, which was the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. And the projects there was like an exhibition, a festival for younger artists. So we would accommodate different spaces and events for people of different who are doing different types of arts, pretty much. And in the Buryat Republic, we did events for women, specifically women artists, to talk about the role of women in the arts, which was a wonderful project that I took part in, and it was very inspiring for me to go along that way. So it inspired me. I've been working a lot specifically with women in the arts, and I think that was the beginning of it all.
Maybe that was that the inspiration source to decide going for a career in curatorial practices?
Well, yes, but I also have like a tiny story about that. When I was 14, I had a dream of my ancestors coming to me and they showed me a tanka, which is like silk and cotton imagery of Buddha or different bodhisattvas, basically deities from Buddhism. And I went with that dream to my auntie, and she told me to go to our shaman. We still have shamanistic presence very much in the community. And the shaman told me that I should go into arts fully. And at 14, I was like, that, yes, that's what I'm going to be doing. So ever since then, I went and applied to for like art history for my bachelor's, and kind of pursued arts after that.
I'm gonna go a little bit sideways to what I was intending to ask you, just because I think it's very interesting. Could you tell us more about the figure of the shaman in your society?
Yeah, I mean, today the shaman is very important for the society, but unfortunately maybe it wasn't as important during the end of the previous century and the beginning of the century because of the Soviet presence in the republic, in the Buryad-Mongolia, because of the religious persecutions, because of the silencing of the traditions and culture. But today I call it kind of like a rebirth of the culture. You just, at some point you realize that you need to know what your roots are coming from, who are your relatives, what are the traditions what are the celebrations in your culture, right? Mm-hmm. It just becomes so vital for a teenager that is growing up and suddenly trying to understand who they are. So I feel like that's very much present, and you can really see with my generation a bit older and younger, that there's this huge necessity in reconnecting. Shamanistic figure is not necessarily religious. Mm-hmm. It's more of a, I would assume it's like an imagery for which you can reconnect with your ancestors, with whom you couldn't have the potential possibility to talk about. I mean, my family has been deeply affected by the Soviet repressions. Therefore, I haven't seen enormous part of my family because of that. And talking to a shaman is like talking to those with whom you wish to talk to. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just brings a sense of comfort by talking to the shaman. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that it's a common practice in today's society, in the place you come from, to be close to the shaman?
I have been actually asking that around, because some families are very Buddhist, so they don't necessarily go to a shaman, although both of those two religions are very interconnected. But I think more and more people are kind of attempting and really wish to connect with a shaman, but maybe they don't have a possibility yet. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's an ongoing, growing wish and need even.
I think it's interesting to talk about the shamans and shamanism in your culture, because I know that it's something that you constantly try to bring into traditional platforms.
Yeah.
And I think that's something very interesting. I would like you to tell us, how do you use your platforms to give space to these practices that you are talking about?
Yeah, my main agenda here is not really to push that kind of beliefs or like subconscious way of thinking onto people, but it's a really, as I said before, like that part of the cultural navigator is very important for me, because for the people who come from the place where I come from, or Siberia, Mongolia, just in general that area, it is very important to be understood once you present your work, right? So I'm not very embarrassed to talk about the wonderful things that my ancestors brought to life, and maybe necessarily today in our contemporary time they're not maybe as understandable for many people due to just change of times, change of pace. But I'm very curious to talk to people about that culture, about shamanism, and I try to bring it via my curatorial approach, by, especially for example in Iceland, I feel like Iceland for me was such a connected place to Mongolia, to Buryad-Mongolia, because of the landscape. I mean, I don't claim that we have volcanoes, but I mean just the presence of nature is very much evident, because there's only 2 places in the world where I felt like nature is looking at me or like after me, and I feel like that would be back home and here. For me, here, when I come to this place, Iceland is already so rich with folklore and their own traditions, and I feel like people do try to preserve it. Maybe not everyone, maybe somebody attempts to do it like much more than others, but I feel like it's so beautiful to see it. And when I try to bring in my way of my behavior or my way of talking to the nature, which is a core belief, let's say, in shamanism, because you kind of almost see everything around you as something animistic, alive, something that can listen to you or hear you or even say something back to you. I see that here in Iceland. It's called different ways. It's huldafolk, right? Like vattir, I think, is the word for different kind of creatures. And it's very much present. And I connect to that quite a bit. For example, in my projects in Iceland, I try to really understand the local culture. And for example, in my projects right now, I am talking to different pulvas, seers, mediums, however people wish to call them, people who talk with local huldafolk, for example. If I go into a natural space, like make an exhibition outdoors, I make sure that everyone is okay with it, not just the organization, but also maybe the huldafolk that live there. So,
yeah, I think that is something really, I think that we can actually translate that into today's society and can be very useful for us to reconnect with nature and to treat nature with more respect and really relate to all sorts of bodies around us in kinder and tender ways, more compassionate ways as well. In a time like today's, in a world that is at war, sadly, in different places, would you say that, what would you say is the relevance of your practice as a curator, as a space facilitator, that can be used to help in this world?
I mean, that's a wonderful question. I think I ask myself that question like every day. I always wonder what I can do more. And I think one of the things that I try to do as much as possible is just the pure initiative and openness to people who come from different cultures. It's I do not work only with Buryad-Mongolian or Mongolian people. I also work with people from absolutely different nations, cultures, because it is one of the most important things to be open and incredibly just curious about others, because I mean there's so many beautiful things that people can bring from their culture and we can learn from them. Because I mean there's so many things in my culture that I love and adore, but some things I wish were different, because that's just how it is. So I think by representing people, by talking to people from different cultures with different minds, perceptions on things, it's so important. And majority of my work was done in collaboration with wonderful, talented women, because for me it's incredibly important to work and give more voice to women, especially back at home. Due to history, due to complicated history during the Soviet and Russian Empire, because obviously in patriarchal society, as we all know, there was not many possibilities for women to speak up and show their work and talent. So yeah, I think it's just curiosity and open-mindedness as like the most basic start for any endeavor. Yeah.
And bridging this question to your curatorial practice and the work that you are doing right now, because as I understand, you are finishing your degree in curatorial practices and you are working on a thesis that relates to this, as you said, to talk to all sorts of bodies and take them into account?
I think my thesis is very much interconnected with the way how I wish to present to people different cultures and different ways of perceiving things. It's this exhibition that I'm curating right now, which is my thesis, along with my actual written thesis. This exhibition is going to be in Litla in Litla Testo, which is the old power plant, which is currently not working. But they have this, on their website, they mentioned that after taking so much from the nature, they wish to give back to the nature and to the society and to the culture. And I think like that resonated with me so much. So that was my first click. As soon as I came to Iceland, I was like, this is the place where I want to make exhibition for my thesis. The thesis talks about the indigenous knowledge brought that could be brought into the dialogue of curatorial practice and like any other artistic endeavors. I think it's so important for people of indigenous background to share their knowledge, because I think it's so essentially beautiful, because a lot of it is very much in dialogue with our surroundings. My exhibition is going to be done with people from different cultures. I mean it from Buryad-Mongolia, I mean it from Iceland, from Germany and other. Those people bring wonderful dialogues and their own culture into that dialogue of communicating with the surroundings. The essential core of the exhibition is basically an attempt to communicate with your surroundings, to listen to the plants, roots, old walls, folk, or however you wish to see them. The exhibition is also done with a seer, with the help of a seer. So
from your culture?
Both, actually, from Iceland and from Mongolia. So obviously I asked for permission from my shaman to curate on this topic. Then also I asked for permission from a local seer who communicated with the local beings, if they're okay with me being in this space. Which is just, I don't know, it's just a wonderful touch, isn't it? Like when you can talk face to face to people, but then you can also imagine communication with different beings or nature surrounding you.
It makes it more tangible in some way.
It is,
and very interesting. I think it's also fascinating, this opportunity that you are using to bridge your culture and Icelandic culture in their very essence, let's say. But this is not the first time you take a space and recontextualize it. As I understand, you have done other works and other exhibitions to an international level. I heard you were curating this exhibition between Norway and Iceland in collaboration with the Icelandic embassy. How was that experience?
I mean, I was so lucky. I was definitely super excited to do this project. The project was done in collaboration with the Icelandic embassy and specifically for the festival of Istagir, which was a 100-year of the Icelandic Association in Norway.
Okay.
So again, this is kind of a conversation about the Icelandic people who moved from Iceland to Norway. And they asked me to do an exhibition celebrating something that could be inspired by the culture or could be from the culture. And when I was thinking about it, I was really much kind of going back into the history of the place where the exhibition is going to be, which was the Old Munch Museum. And you just straight up Googled the place, and the first pictures you see is like old pictures of like an enormous amount of men in suits going into the exhibition and not a single woman inside. And I was like, this is a place for me to kind of go into what I believe in and attempt to change the reality, change the history of the space. The exhibition that I created for the Gamle Munch, the Old Munch Museum, was with wonderful women, and specifically for me it was so important to present Icelandic, Norwegian women, and Sami women, because I mean I just give any opportunity to indigenous people, but also I mean the history, the collaboration between Iceland and Norway could not be without Sami people
definitely
in question. So that was my attempt to bring something of my own into endeavor that I'm doing, not specifically related to my culture.
And such a healthy practice to break out with old ways to do things that are definitely expired. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have that much time left, and I really wanted to ask you how your experience in Iceland has been. Have you found a welcoming society?
I feel like in any place, Iceland for me was definitely a hard place to begin with. It's funny you ask about that, because actually during the time when I was in conversation with the Icelandic embassy in Norway, at that moment in time my brother was deported from here, who was a refugee here in Iceland.
I'm very sorry to hear.
Yeah, and it was obviously not a great time, but that was my way of kind of communicating that we could be part of the society and we could be in a conversation in the society. So
of course.
Again, it was hard time, but then I found so many wonderful people around me who are Icelandic, who are international people here, who really gave me lots of support and love and care, and just, I don't know, showed me a different Iceland.
It is very unfortunate sometimes to be contrasted, but by that difference between individual Icelandic people that show kindness and understanding, and unfortunately sometimes that doesn't translate to the institutions.
Yeah.
That's why practices like yours are so very important, to show them that we come here to give the very best and to enrich the society.
Yeah.
Daria, you mentioned about your brother and about this contrast working with institutions in Iceland and at the same time your brother being deported. Why was he deported?
Well, it was a Dublin regulation, which is a main reason for his deportation. The way how it was dealt with was very unnecessary and illegal, because he was, when he was in a conversation with the government and specific organizations, they communicated to him that he will be deported back to Russia, which is illegal, and he entered the European Union through Spain, so he was supposed to be deported to Spain, but via this communication it never came to be that way, and therefore we had to actually fight with them and be in consistent dialogue and really try our best. I mean, go to the media. It was in the newspapers, it was in the media, and yeah, after only actually speaking up, and I mean, I have an enormous privilege of being with an Icelandic partner who helped me enormously here because he speaks Icelandic and he could write emails in Icelandic. We could communicate with them and tell them that this is not a correct way to deal with this situation.
And to treat a human being.
No, definitely not. And I mean, it's just, it was a peak of war. He's an indigenous person of minority in Russia. They get mobilized so much more. So there are so many like worries and just, yeah, it was a lot. And
it was life-threatening for him to be deported back to Russia, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there was always a conversation about like, would he be deported? There's a lot of like people, speculations and whatnot, but it was a very big worry because I mean, so many people of our look and origin were mobilized for the war.
You have this space. You can talk to the people that are watching us. What would you like to tell them about this? How to change this?
Nobody comes to a place as a refugee because they choose this country on a map. They come to the place with the wishful thinking that people here with an open heart could help them, at least for a bit of time. But I mean, one of the most important things to know is that all these people desperately miss home and really wish to come back home in a more better circumstances and a much more peaceful circumstances where they can enjoy and be at home with their relatives, with their friends. And unfortunately, they're here in a very bad type of way, which is incredibly sad. And all we can do is try our best to help them. And I do know that there's an enormous part of society here that is incredibly, right now, speaking up and big fighters for the people of different origin with different circumstances and different type of upbringing and background, and it's so wonderful to see. Unfortunately, it doesn't really translate in the most biggest type of way in the organizations, which are still very sometimes racist, sometimes very xenophobic towards people who come from different cultures. So I hope they see the genuine wish to participate in the society and be part of the society and be open towards them.
Yeah, certainly. And I certainly hope so. Daria, what is coming next? What's next for you? You have your thesis. I heard you are curating another big exhibition in Italy.
Yeah, I'm actually, that's correct. I'm exhibiting in Italy with wonderful Mongolian and Buryad artists, which I'm super excited about because it's kind of like gives me opportunity to come back to my culture and then learn about new cultures. So it's kind of like a constant mix of those two. There's not much about this exhibition I can tell now, but
we shall wait.
Yeah, we shall wait. I'm super excited about it. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you once again for coming here. And thank you for touching on the conversations we have touched. It has been really wonderful to have you. And if there is anything that this platform can do to help you and to help conveying the messages that are so important, we are just here and we will be so happy to help you.
Thank you.
So Daria, we have a guest,
Yeah.
and I would like you to introduce our guest.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful friend of mine. It's a wonderful person, musician, Khairkhan, who is of Mongolian descent, and I'm just so happy to share his talent with you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Daria Testo and Khairkhan right next.
Sambachanou, thank you for having me here today. My name is Khairkhan, and I'm a Horchi Mongol. I'm from the east side of Mongolian grassland, and back to the history, my ancestors was the little brother of Genghis Khan, Habatu Khazar. And today I'll be here to play some traditional Mongolian music. Also, I'm dressing as a real Mongolian here. It's a Mongolian dress called dul. And about dul, it's a little bit like the Norwegian bunad. From different tribes, you have different patterns, you have different colors. So by how you're dressing, people will know that's which tribe you are coming from. And the instrument that's in my hand is called tovshur. It's playing like a guitar, just easier. And the first song I will demonstrate is called Mandul Khani Makdal.
的里呼啦，听个人说说人带上，温暖期待里松树多罗多，云波云波云波那那云波云波云波那那呵云波，云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波云波啊啊云波。
Okay, so the next instrument I will play Okay, so the next instrument I will play is called tor. This is a really traditional Mongolian instrument, and the time can be traced back to Middle Age. Currently, there are not a lot of people playing tor because it's harder to play and harder to take care of. Another key thing is the sound of this instrument doesn't fit quite into the modern music. So it's really sad the instrument almost died out. But gladly that there are slowly more and more young people pick up the old instrument again to find the root of the culture and the root of what our ancestors was listening to. So the next song I'm gonna play is called Sumaro. It's a Hortin folk song. It's telling about the love story between a llama and his lover. The old lama was not that happy because the young lama is not taking care of the temple, is not praying. All he is thinking about is about how to meet his girl. Okay, so Sumaro. This instrument in my hand is called the marinhor. Direct translation is called horse fiddle. You can see that there's a horse head on the top, and horse in Mongolian culture is a really dominant symbol. We love horses, we worship horses, and horse is kind of carry our culture and our pride through the Middle Age until today. The marinhor, people can think that is actually evolved version from the tor I just played. The sound is more sharper, And today, there are more and more musicians that are using monochord to mix with pop music and metal music. The next song I play will be also a traditional song. It's called Tengri Salhi, meaning the wind in the sky. This is an old song that's telling you that life is like wind. You never stop. And when your life is short, you should enjoy your life at its the best.